again, if there's anything that I can assist with, here's my contact information. And this is also the WGA mission that I've thrown into the back because we really do try to pull together groups, diversity, opinions, and to make a difference and come up with solutions. Thank you, James.
Thank you, Ann, very much. I do want to reiterate, too, that electronic copies of these guidebooks are available on the Wildfire Clearinghouse as well as the WGA website. If someone wants hard copies of this, do they contact you?
Yes, they do. WGA has hard copies of all of the plans that I talked about and the guides. Also, Society of American Foresters have additional copies of the Community Guide to Preparing and Implementing a CWPP.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Ann. So before we move to Cheryl's presentation, we do have another poll we'd like to ask everybody. Does your CWPP include recommendations to adopt ordinances, zoning changes, policy changes, etc.? Yes, no, don't have a CWPP in place at this point. It's only a single answer question this time. So again, we'll just wait a few seconds to see what results we get here. Okay, plugging along. It looks like it's pretty even. It looks like most of the folks who have responded so far don't have a CWPP in place at this point. Ann, do you find that surprising?
No, I don't. Believe it or not, it is a very difficult process to get started. And, I think because of the decision makers outlined, it's not just one entity or one agency that you can put a finger on and say, you need to do this. Right. So it really takes a collaborative effort coming together and the community recognizing the need to do this, to make them happen. And funding is another key problem that, I think there's a lot of help out there now, especially with secure rural schools and some of the counties that have funding to do specific things under Title III with community wildfire protection plans, along with successful programs like FireWise communities and fire safe councils like they have in Nevada.
Okay. Well, Ann, thank you so much. Now I'd like to introduce Cheryl Renner, who's a former zoning administrator and planning director, who has for the last 7 years researched fuels reduction programs for the National Wildfire Programs Database. Cheryl is an expert on ordinances to reduce wildfire risk in communities. She is a principal in the consulting firm Renner Associates, Planners in Tampa, Florida. Cheryl?
Thank you, James. Hi, everyone. I'll be talking about state guidelines and model ordinances for wildfire risk reduction. First, we need to understand how homes ignite in the case of a wildfire. And fire science has shown us that there are two mechanisms by which homes ignite. First, direct flame heating, where flames come in contact with the house itself. And secondly, direct firebrand ignition, where live embers are thrown from the fire and they collect either on the roof or in the eaves or on the deck or even penetrate the home. And it can take hours, but the live embers will also start a fire. So knowing this, how can we protect homes from wildfire? Well, there are two basic ways to do it. First, we can modify the home. We can build homes out of ignition-resistant building materials. So this is easy enough to do in areas where we're having new development and we can have ordinances that require homes to be built out of ignition-resistant building materials, but much harder in existing housing stock. And then
excuse me, Cheryl. Excuse me.
Yeah.
We're having a hard time getting your presentation up.
Oh, I'm looking at my own. You are doing it separately?
Well, we don't have your slides up.
Huh. Oh, okay.
Hit the OK button in front of you.
Okay.
Do you see that?
No. Where is it? Oh, show my screen.
Now we got it.
Okay, let me go back then.
Okay,
all right,
thank
well,
you.
This is still the first slide. Okay. So we need to provide adequate defensible space around the home. And that also that's the home ignition zone, which is 200 feet all around the home. And depending on the location of the home, 200 feet may be way too much. But if it's in an area of high slope and very high hazard, 200 feet may really be necessary. So we need to ask, I'm having trouble changing the slide.
Click on it and then press the down button. It should work.
Do what?
Click on the slide and then press the down arrow key.
Okay, good. Who is responsible for the structure of the home and its immediate surroundings? And inevitably we come to the conclusion that it is the homeowner. Homeowners need to be educated about their responsibility, and they need to be motivated to make the necessary changes. So the question for county administrators is, do we use the carrot or the stick? Do we use guidelines and education, or do we use regulation? And then what level of government is most appropriate? Is this a statewide problem, or is it a regional or local problem? Do we want to only address new construction, or are we going to try to retrofit the existing housing stock? And how are we going to deal with maintenance over time? Because even when you do new construction and have it fire safe from the start, over time your landscape is going to change and grow, and what's fire safe today will be a problem in 10 to 12 years. And then where can you as county administrators look for guidance? And we suggest that you look at the NACO Wildfire Clearinghouse. There are a lot of great resources on the clearinghouse, and you can spend some time looking at all of them. I'm looking now at the publications and other sources page. And if you go to the first link on it, Wildfire Programs, and click on that, it'll bring you to the National Wildfire Programs database. The database has over 250 programs of all kinds to reduce fuels on private land. So it includes education and homeowner assistance and ordinances. There are about 75 ordinances cataloged on this database. But an ordinance doesn't just solve the problem, because what's been found in areas where ordinances exist is that you still need an education program. You still need to have the understanding of the homeowners so that they're motivated to do what they should do. And you also will need some homeowner assistance programs to help those who can't do it on their own or simply can't afford to do it. Having done the research for that database, what we found was that there were many ordinances, many kinds of ordinances that included defensible space language. So there isn't one ordinance type that solves all the problems. That the different areas are using different types of ordinances and still getting at the same result. We found some statewide ordinances in Oregon, California, and Utah, and then we found local ordinances, which we found language in comprehensive plans. We found zoning ordinances with zoning overlay hazard maps. We found it in development codes and subdivision regulations, in fire codes, building codes. Some of the newer use was in nuisance ordinances and homeowner association CC&Rs, covenants, conditions, and restrictions. And when the neighborhood association takes on the responsibility, then it's not local government's responsibility to enforce it, but it becomes something that the neighborhood itself enforces. This new publication, Safer from the Start, from Firewise, is an excellent source of all kinds of information on building safer neighborhoods from the ground up. And it does include CC&R language that's been successful in other areas. Another place you can find model language is in the Wildland Urban Interface Model Fire Codes, and there are two of them. There's the ICC, International Wildland Urban Interface Code, and that's available for purchase from their website. The address is above. And also NFPA's 1144 and 1141. 1144 deals with the structure of the house itself, and 1141 deals with all the infrastructure issues such as roads and access, bridges, water supply. So taken together, they encompass all the types of regulations that you would need for a wildland-urban interface area. What's the difference between guidelines and ordinances? Well, there's not much difference. The biggest difference is that an ordinance has an administrative aspect to it and an enforcement aspect. And a guideline is more user-friendly. They tend to have a lot of graphics in them to explain to homeowners exactly what they need to do to create defensible space. What we have here are 3 graphics from the Montana state guidelines for defensible space. And you can see that on relatively flat land, 100 feet of defensible space is recommended, and when the slope gets greater, it moves out to 150 feet. So this is typical of what you might see in guidelines. Some ordinances have graphics in them also to make it more understandable. A lot of the states have adopted guidelines, including Colorado, Florida, Montana, Minnesota, New Mexico, Virginia, and Washington. So if you're looking for guidance in how to develop an ordinance, I would say the first thing you need to do is check with your state forestry agency and see if they have guidelines, and also check with your state forester and see what resources he has available. I'll talk briefly about California and Oregon's statewide laws. California has a network of laws that support their defensible space and building codes. They began implementing regulatory programs in 1985, and they started with the state responsibility areas for fire suppression. This is a map of the fire hazard zones in the state responsibility areas. And you can see they have a lot of red, high wildfire risk zones. Over the years, they've increased the defensible space requirements. First, they were only 30 feet. Now they're 100 feet. And they moved not just from regulating state responsibility areas, but now local responsibility areas are also included and require 100 feet of defensible space. The laws include ordinances at the local level to implement the state regulatory program, and it involves a lot of inspections, and it's a large and difficult program to administer. In 2008, California adopted the first ignition-resistant building and fire codes, and these are available on the CAL FIRE website. The web address is at the bottom of the slide. These fire codes involve standards for decks, roofs, eaves, underfloor areas, windows, exterior doors, and exterior vents. In contrast to California, Oregon passed the Forest Land Urban Interface Fire Protection Act in 1997, and its program, although it's a state law, it's implemented on a county-by-county basis, and it largely is a public participation process and a homeowner education process. This is a picture of the public education document that's sent to each homeowner who's in a high wildfire risk area. It explains to him why he needs to modify his landscape, what exactly he needs to do in order to get it to meet the standards, and it has self-certification. The homeowner has 2 years in which to bring his landscape into